$18 trillion with a T dollars in debt. And what are lawmakers fighting over now? Raising the debt ceiling yet again. John, you say enough with the raising, start with the cutting.
Absolutely. President Obama in 2006, talking about the raising the debt ceiling under President Bush, said that we have a debt problem and a failure of leadership. And he went to go on to say that America deserves better. I agree. America deserves better. From 2000 till now, spending has gone on absolutely unabated. Under President Bush, it's almost doubled. Under President Obama, it's almost going to double again. President Obama's budget going forward is $8 trillion increase in the next decade. We're looking at $26 trillion in the next decade. At some point, our future is robbed. We need to put something with this, like a balanced budget amendment in a reasonable time frame, say 6 to 10 years, to tie this, because that's the only way you can keep these guys from spending money, because their only goal is to get reelected, not help America.
Well, Jonas, Congress likes to spend money. Politicians like to spend money. They talk about cutting, but they don't want to cut the things that really would take a bite out of the budget, out of the deficit and the debt. Entitlements, because that's very politically unpopular.
And voters like getting stuff. You're certainly not going to get that part of the budget cut before major election coming up next year. Look, you can't not hit this ceiling, because about, 80% of the budget they're never going to touch. In the best case scenario, if everybody was Republican in government, it won't happen, because they won't get reelected. So it is time, although I will say this is a strong economy now with a low unemployment rate. This is when you want to start running a balanced budget, because you can. In a recession like a few years ago, that's when you run a deficit. I'm not against that. So we should be cutting, but we also should be cutting the ceiling, this debt ceiling, which obviously doesn't work. To John's point, look at what happened to the debt over the last 20 years. What it does do is increase the debt, because we're borrowing money right now at a higher rate than Germany and Japan, partially because we have this infinitesimally small but likely chance that we might default because of this stupid ceiling these other countries don't have. Get rid of the ceiling. Our borrowing rate goes down, means less interest. It'll actually help pay down the debt. So get rid of it and do a little cutting while the economy's strong. That's my recipe for
okay, Gary B., what do you think of that?
Not getting elected.
I think we're in big trouble, Brenda. Look, if we don't stop this increasing debt via the debt ceiling, we're going to be worse off than Greece. Here's why. Most people normally look at debt as a percentage of GDP, and there we're not too bad. I think we rank like 34th or something. We're like 61% in that regard. You say, okay, well, we're okay. But really, we pay off our debt through tax revenues. There, our debt to tax revenues is 408%. You know where we rank, Brenda? Third. Japan's first. Greece at 475% is second. We're at 408%, Brenda. That to me should send a warning signal. My gosh, we have a higher ratio than Portugal, Spain, and some of these other countries in misery. So if that doesn't put things into perspective, that we need to somehow, as John said, either through a balanced budget, cutting down clamping the debt ceiling, somehow, some way, we're going to wind up like Greece. And I don't think that's a good place to go.
Well, you know, I think everybody's, mine, yours, everybody's share of this is some $50,000. Chuck, should we raise the debt ceiling or just cut spending?
This just in, people in Washington, D.C. care about giving stuff away and giving people money because they can get reelected. Absolutely, that's what they're doing. But with this particular debt ceiling, with this particular case, this is on debt that we've already incurred. We have to pay this to keep our economy going because we don't want to default on our loans. Oh, my God, I sound like Gary B. We don't want to default on our loans, but you have to do something to cut between now and then, because you can't go back and not pay a bill you've already made.
Chuck, aren't you always going to make that argument, though, that the debt ceiling, I hear that so many times. We got to raise the debt ceiling because it's already for debts we incurred.
But you got to do something, Gary, between now and then. The politicians are just going to sit back and keep on keeping on, but you got to pay the debt now, and then get some politicians with a backbone who will actually do something.
Okay.
If you want to have some cuts.
that's going to happen.
Okay, Ashley.
Look, we need to cut spending, we need to cut the size of the federal government, and we need to shrink government to the point that, they're bare bones, because right now everyone's living off the fat of the government, and that's ridiculous. What we need to do is get our fiscal house in order. We have to make cuts where we can, and we have to start paying our debt back. $18 trillion, that's unfathomable, to the point that people in my generation don't even understand how much money that is. Why? Because we've grown up with debt, and that is a serious, serious problem. But the way that it has increased in our share of the debt, individually, Brenda, I think you mentioned it's around 50. I think it's around 58,000 per person, which is sickening to think about that. That's almost like, well, it's way more than a mortgage. But it's at the point where it's almost unfathomable to anyone in my generation who's going to have to eventually pay off this debt.
That's a very good point. All right, thanks, guys. Cashing in just over an hour from now. Eric, what do you guys have coming up?
Hi, Brenda. The White House says President Obama wants to take in more Syrian refugees. Could this make us vulnerable to another terror attack? And how much will it cost us? Plus, the Kim Davis case, shining a light on religious freedom in the workplace. Should everyone be able to work according to their faith? Cashing in. See you at 11:30.
Thanks, Eric. We'll be watching. But up here first, what one state just did that may be paving the way for a national $15 an hour minimum wage, and why someone here is warning, careful what you wish for.